I'm actually looking at a very interesting book about the history of Swan. You know, we can start from 50 years ago and the modern racing. And I personally feel very honored to be part of this history with the Club Swans that have recently been the One Designs and the racing side of the Swan family.
You always try to push the yacht design in a new frontier.
I think it's embedded or is intrinsic to sailing. Sailing in itself is transformation of energy, you know, free energy of the wind into forward motion. So to see yachts or yacht design any different than efficiency in how one transforms energy is like a contradiction. So within this sort of transformation of energy challenge, one has to keep always an open mind and find new ways to do it. So I believe that that's always been my criteria, my philosophy is to always find better ways to transform energy. Now, sometimes you condition by rules, sometimes you condition by you know, the categories that you want to fit. But at the end of the day, the only fundamental rule that you're playing against is that one of physics, you know, the physics on this planet.
There is something particular in your career that opened this view?
That's a good question. I think I've always been like that. If I hear about the stories and the tales that my mother tells that I cannot remember when I was a young kid, what transpires is that I've always been this annoying kid that liked to play with stuff. So I believe that there hasn't been a specific moment or a specific situation that triggered it, but I think it's embedded in my personality, in who I am, is to always try to improve myself and improve what I do. Again, always conditioned by the laws of physics.
But you like to sail the Star.
Yeah. Yes, and that's a big challenge in itself. Yeah, I love the Starboat. Starboat is a fantastic class. And I like it for two reasons. One is the technical side of the class. It requires sailing at a very extreme finesse. I always say that if you're a good start sailor, then you can basically sail in any boat. But also the class, the competitiveness, and the level at which the racing happens in the Star class is so high that it's very challenging in itself. So yeah, it's a class that has ticked all the boxes for me. It's very nice.
Which is your opinion about the word sustainability?
It's a very tricky question, because sustainability changes as a function of where you start the clock. And I think that there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of miscomprehension about sustainability. It's almost like a fashionable word right now. If you decide to start the clock of how sustainable something is with the end product, such as an electric car, for example, then it's very easy to convince oneself that, you know, some solutions are sustainable. But I think that that's kind of lying to oneself. The real sustainability needs to be analyzed in a much broader context. And I think that this is where the notion of Gaia that James Lovelock introduced is key to understand it. I think he very recently left us, passed away, but he's one of the, to me, one of the guys that, the scientists that really understood how this planet works as a symbiosis, as everything is related to everything else. And I think that if you look at sustainability from that point of view, not just when it suits you. One can have a very different point of view that the one that is very marketable or very fashionable right now. So without getting too much into the details, I would say, what does it mean sustainability? Well, it means starting the counting from the root, not from where it suits some politicians or some marketing groups. Yeah.
Well, now we pronounce another word, foiling.
Mm-hmm. Well, foiling is, in fact, I actually think foiling is very badly used, because it's being used to really mean flying lately. I think in the world of yachting, one thing is foiling and another thing is flying, and a lot of people sort of mix both of them. But in the context of what I think you mean is the world of flying, is basically creating these vessels which still interact between water and air, but they do it by minimizing the contact with the water. That is what I call flying, and I think a lot of people call foiling. Because you can actually foil. The foiling for me is the reliance on a foil to produce some kind of forces, but you can foil without fly. So, you know, in fact, a lot of boats, they foil. Most boats, a keel is a foil, you know, and you could sail in a very Archimedean way with a foil such as the keel and be very far away from flying. So there is a distinction there. But anyway, without getting too annoying with the words, flying is extremely exciting. I've been involved in designing some flying boats recently, which I found to be very motivating, very exciting. Particularly the 45F we did with King Marine in Valencia, that hopefully you'll know more of very soon. And I see that as a super interesting side of yachting. But I don't think it's the only yachting. I think that yachting is vast enough and big enough to accommodate the traditional as far as the new, the foiling. I think that there is very much room for everybody, and I think it's a mistake that it's not so much now, but at the beginning of the foiling, 5, 6, 7 years ago, when foiling became quite a fanciful and fashionable thing, a lot of the people that were promoting it, they were trying to promote it in spite of the traditional and against the tradition. I think that was a mistake. I think that now we're getting to understand that both types of flying, both types of yachting are equally important. And I think that we need to learn how to cohabit with both of them. You know, and I'm sort of in the middle, because I enjoy very much doing these flying sessions, designing and sailing these flying boats. But I also like very much to go in a starboat and do a race with 80 or 90 boats in a start in a very 100-year-old boat like the starboat, which is extremely competitive and pushes the sailing skills of the yachtsmen to the limit. When you look at this book, I can't imagine maybe the same book they will do a few years from now will probably have some of the boats I design, and that fills me with joy and enthusiasm.